They aired it live. The Grawl Dominion didn't just kill 12 humans. They wanted us to watch. 12 unarmed diplomats stood in a line, bound, their faces battered but defiant. The alien warlord sneered into the camera, holding up a blade dripping with human blood. "This is what we think of your peace." One by one, the humans were executed, their screams lost in the sound of alien laughter. The last diplomat, a woman, barely able to stand, spat blood at her captor before they cut her down. The broadcast ended with a message, transmitted to every star system. "Humanity kneels today. Humanity dies tomorrow." They expected us to surrender. Instead, they started a war they could never win. The broadcast ended, but the silence it left in its wake was louder than any explosion. Captain Elias Voss stood in the war room, staring at the screen. His jaw tightened, his knuckles white around the edge of the table. 12 humans. 12 unarmed diplomats. Executed like animals. The Dominion warlord had smiled as he did it, slicing their throats one by one, letting the blood pool at his feet like some twisted ritual. The words still echoed in his mind. "Humanity kneels today. Humanity dies tomorrow." Voss exhaled through his nose. Cold rage filled his chest, slow burning, calculated. Around him, admirals and politicians murmured in hushed tones, debating sanctions, diplomatic responses, measured retaliation. Measured. The very word made him sick. "This was an act of war," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut through the noise. The others fell silent. Fleet Admiral Garrick, an old warhorse who had spent his career avoiding conflict, folded his hands. "Captain Voss, I understand your anger." "No, you don't," Voss interrupted. He met the Admiral's gaze. "Because if you did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The Union cannot afford an all-out war with the Dominion." Garrick pressed, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Our strength lies in diplomacy." Voss let out a short, humorless laugh. 12 of our people just got their throats cut on a galactic live stream, and you want to talk about diplomacy? Do you think they were negotiating when they bled out on that floor?" He turned to the gathered officers, scanning their faces. "We are not discussing war. War already started. The only thing left to decide is whether we fight back or roll over and die." A younger officer, Commander Rains, hesitated before speaking. "The Dominion is too large, Captain. If we escalate, they'll retaliate tenfold." Voss nodded slowly. "They think we're afraid of that. They think we'll hesitate. They believe humanity is soft. Weak. Too civilized for real war." His expression darkened. "They're wrong." He placed his hands on the table, leaning forward. "We don't just fight wars. We end them. We don't play by their rules. We don't fight fair. We erase threats." The silence in the room deepened. "You're suggesting a first strike?" Garrick asked carefully. "No," Voss said, straightening. "I'm not suggesting anything." He turned on his heel. "I'm acting." The war room erupted in protests. Garrick shouted his name. Security officers moved to intercept. But Voss had already keyed a command into his wrist pad. The Black Spear fleet was waiting for the signal. Outside the station's viewport, dozens of Terran warships activated their silent running drives and vanished into the void. By the time the admirals issued their orders, by the time the politicians drafted their condemnations, by the time Garrick opened his mouth to bark an order, Voss was already gone. The Dominion outpost at Zyros 4 never saw them coming. Voss sat in the cockpit of his assault dropship, helmet in hand, watching the holographic display as the target loomed in the distance. The Black Spear task force had deployed in full force. Stealth ships coasted through the darkness, unreadable to Dominion scanners. Their cyber warfare AI had already infiltrated the outpost systems, feeding the enemy false sensor readings while disabling their automated defenses. The Grawl stationed here were relaxed, certain no retaliation would come. After all, the humans wouldn't dare. They were about to learn otherwise. Voss exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders. His squad sat across from him, silent professionals clad in adaptive combat armor, their helmets locked in place. Every single one of them had volunteered. Every single one of them had watched the execution video. None of them spoke. Words weren't necessary. The dropship jolted as the doors opened. The cold vacuum of space yawned before them. Below, the outpost gleamed in the darkness. 100 heartbeats passed in silence. Then Voss stood. Go! They launched into the void, silent missiles of vengeance streaking toward the unsuspecting Dominion base. They landed without a sound, their mag boots gripping the outer hull. Voss took point, leading his squad across the structure's surface. The breach team moved to the airlock, overriding security protocols within seconds. The doors hissed open. The first Dominion sentry didn't even have time to scream before a silenced plasma round punched through his skull. The humans moved like ghosts, sweeping through the corridors, killing with precision, with purpose. Voss grabbed a Dominion officer by the throat, slamming him against the wall. The alien gurgled, clawing at his grip. "Where's your commander?" Voss asked, his voice low. The officer spat at him. Voss crushed his windpipe and let him fall. They found the Dominion command center in minutes. The Grawl warlord, the one who had mocked humanity on the broadcast, was sitting in his throne-like command chair, completely unaware that his world had already ended. Voss stepped into the room. The warlord's mandibles clicked in confusion. Then fear. Voss leveled his weapon. "Surprise, motherfucker!" He pulled the trigger. The Grawl's head exploded, purple gore splattering across the walls. The room erupted into chaos. Dominion guards scrambled, reaching for weapons, but Black's spear moved first. Gunfire ripped through the air, bodies dropping before they could react. Seconds. That was all it took. Voss stepped over the bodies, approaching the warlord's still bleeding corpse. He knelt, tilting the alien's severed head toward the security camera. He pressed a button on his wrist pad. The live broadcast hijacked every Grawl transmission across the sector. The Dominion citizens, soldiers, and leaders all saw the same thing. A human. Standing over their dead warlord. Holding his severed head like a trophy. Voss stared into the camera, his voice calm. 12 of ours. Millions of yours. He let the head drop. That's the price. The screen cut to black. And across the stars, the Dominion began to scream. The Dominion reeled. Across the stars, panic spread like wildfire. Their mighty war machine, built on centuries of conquest, had never encountered an enemy that struck without warning, without hesitation, without mercy. The humans had always been predictable, diplomatic, restrained, bound by rules. Now they had become something else. Something terrifying. Voss stood aboard the warship Iron Hand, watching as the transmission played on loop across intercepted Dominion channels. The warlord's severed head, the chilling final words, 12 of ours. Millions of yours. That's the price. The message was clear. A junior officer hesitated before speaking. "Sir, we've intercepted Dominion fleet movements. They're rallying." Voss didn't look away from the screen. "How many?" "Hundreds of ships. Full mobilization. They're bringing everything." Finally, he turned. A slow nod. "Good." He stepped toward the central display, where a three-dimensional star map flickered, showing Dominion fleet formations. They were gathering at Veldrath Prime, their largest fortress world. Defensible, heavily armed, a stronghold that had never fallen. They assumed the humans would come with brute force, fleet against fleet, engaging them in a war of attrition. They assumed wrong. Voss activated his wrist pad. "Get me Colonel Ivers." The comms officer made the connection. A moment later, a scarred face appeared on the holoscreen. Colonel Jonas Ivers, head of Blackout Division, a classified branch of Terran intelligence specializing in total electronic warfare. "Voss," Ivers grunted. "Heard you stirred the hive. Dominion screaming loud enough for half the galaxy to hear. They're moving to Veldrath Prime. We're not meeting them there." Ivers smirked. "You have a plan?" Voss exhaled. "I don't need a plan. I just need them to look the other way." Ivers gave a knowing nod. "You want a blackout?" "Not just a blackout. I want their systems turned against them. Confusion. Chaos. Make their ships see phantom fleets, make their weapons target their own. Blind them so completely they don't even realize they're dying. Ivers scratched his chin. Risky. That level of interference? We're talking total infiltration of their command networks. If they catch us before the first strike lands, the plan crumbles. Voss didn't blink. They won't catch us. Ivers let out a low chuckle. Damn right they won't. The transmission cut. Voss turned to his officers. Prep the fleet. Silent approach. We hit them before they even realize we're in the system. The bridge crew moved with trained precision. No wasted words. No hesitation. The fleet adjusted its course, skirting the Dominion's outer defenses unnoticed. Minutes passed. Then hours. The trap was set. Inside Veldrath Prime's command citadel, Admiral Zargath of the Dominion studied his war maps, mandibles twitching. Reports flooded in from across the Empire. Humans were attacking border outposts, launching raids, but avoiding direct confrontation. It was puzzling. They should be mounting a full-scale invasion. But something about their movements felt off. An officer approached, bowing. Admiral, our fleet is in position. If the humans come, they will break upon us. Zargath didn't respond immediately. His instincts, honed over decades of war, whispered unease. Humans were logical. Tactical. This wasn't tactics. This was madness. Then the alarms blared. Admiral! Enemy fleet detected! Zargatha's head snapped up. The holographic display lit up with dozens of Terran warships, closing in at high velocity. They're attacking from Sector 5! Zargath bared his fangs. Finally! All ships, form a defensive wall. Prepare for engagement. The Dominion fleet moved like a well-oiled machine, adjusting positions, bringing weapons online. Veldratha's planetary defenses activated, locking onto the incoming Terran ships. Except, the ships weren't real. The first missile launch fizzled out as Dominion targeting systems scrambled, locking onto friendly vessels instead of enemies. A dozen warships fired into empty space, their own sensors feeding them false enemy locations. Panic spread through the fleet. Zargath slammed a fist against the console. What is happening? The officer beside him was pale. Our systems, they're compromised. Before he could finish, the real attack came. Terran warships decloaked inside their defensive perimeter, having slipped through invisible to sensors. Dominion crews barely had time to scream before kinetic railguns tore through their hulls, ripping through decks like paper. Explosions bloomed in the void. Ships that should have fired back instead registered their own allies as hostiles, their weapons locked down by invasive human AI worms. Inside the fortress world, Veldratha's orbital defense grid turned against its own fleet, anti-air turrets cutting through Dominion fighters as if they were enemy craft. Zargatha's voice turned into a snarl. It's a trap! Recalibrate targeting! Override system locks! Now! The officers worked furiously, their claws clacking against consoles, but the ship's own computers denied them access. It was over before it began. The humans had already won. Inside the Iron Hand, Voss watched the chaos unfold. Cold, surgical. Not war. Extermination. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Ronan Vale, stood beside him. Orders, sir? Voss's voice was calm. No survivors. Veldrath Prime burned. Entire cities were glassed in coordinated orbital strikes, their surface reduced to nothing but smoldering wastelands. The Dominion fleet, once vast and unstoppable, was systematically dismantled, warships left powerless as humans hacked their navigation, locking them into collisions with one another. The command citadel fell last. Voss led the strike team himself, boots pounding against the halls slick with Dominion blood. The remaining officers fought desperately, but it was panic, not strategy. They had already lost. Zargath stood at the end of the corridor, blade drawn. Voss stopped a few feet away, lowering his rifle. The Dominion admiral snarled. You monsters! Voss smirked. Now you get it. Zargath lunged. Too slow. Voss stepped inside his guard, blade flashing. The Dominion's throat opened, dark blood spilling onto the steel floor. The body hit the ground. Voss turned to the last remaining Dominion officers. This empire is dead, he said coldly. Tell the galaxy what happens when you spill human blood. He gestured toward the open airlock. Run! They did. By the time they looked back, Veldrath Prime was gone. The broadcast reached every corner of the galactic map. Dominion home fleets, upon hearing the news, began to surrender en masse. Leaders fled. Former allies of the Dominion broke their pacts, eager to distance themselves from the humans' wrath. And in the heart of Terran space, a simple message was transmitted on every channel. For every human life taken, we will take 1,000,000 of yours. Do not test us again. The war was over. Humanity had won. The war was over, but the killing wasn't finished. Captain Elias Voss stood on the bridge of the Iron Hand, watching the remains of the Dominion's last fleet drift like shattered bones in the void. Smoke and debris swirled in the vacuum, remnants of ships that once carried the might of an empire. Now they were nothing. Nothing but corpses and broken metal. A transmission came through, barely a whisper against the hum of the warship's systems. It was weak, filled with static, but the voice was unmistakable. Supreme Warlord Carvax, the last leader of the Dominion, the butcher responsible for the execution of 12 unarmed humans. You bastard! The alien rasped. You think this is victory? Voss didn't blink. This isn't victory. This is justice. Carvax coughed, wet and ragged. You don't understand. Humanity was never meant to win. Voss tilted his head. Enlighten me. A low, wheezing laugh. You think we feared your guns? No. We feared your restraint. The transmission crackled. But now you have none left. Voss remained silent. You believe you have ended the war, Carvax continued. But all you have done is show the galaxy what humanity truly is. A monster hidden beneath flesh. A species of predators pretending to be civilized. His breath hitched. You have won, Voss. And now they will never let you rise again. The screen flickered. The transmission cut. Silence returned to the bridge. Lieutenant Vale exhaled sharply. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Voss turned away from the display. It means they were afraid of us for the wrong reasons. A new transmission came through, this time from the Terran High Command. The face of Admiral Garrick filled the screen, grim, unreadable. Captain Voss. Admiral. You're ordered to return to Terran space immediately. Voss studied him. We're not finished. Yes, you are, Garrick said. The Dominion is gone. There's nothing left to fight. Voss crossed his arms. Then why do I hear hesitation in your voice? Garrick let out a slow breath. Because Carvax wasn't wrong. He tapped a control on his console. See for yourself. The screen shifted to a galactic news feed. Reports scrolled by, broadcasts from every major power in the known universe. Humanity's war against the Dominion had been swift, brutal, total. The footage of Veldrath Prime burning, the Dominion fleets torn apart, the warlords executed, it was everywhere. Voss watched as alien commentators spoke in hushed, fearful tones. Governments declared emergency councils, military build-ups, containment measures. Containment. Vale swore. They're afraid of us. Garrick's voice was grave. Afraid? No. They see us as a threat now. A force too dangerous to exist unchecked. Voss let that sink in. The galaxy had never feared humanity before. Not truly. They had viewed them as a minor power, a civilization bound by rules, diplomacy, restraint. Now they had seen something else, something raw, something uncontrollable. They had seen what happened when humans stopped holding back. Voss clenched his fists. So what happens now? Garrick hesitated. They're forming a coalition. A sharp silence fell over the bridge. Vale frowned. A coalition? Against who? Garrick's gaze hardened. Against us. Voss remained still, but the tension in his jaw deepened. How many? Enough, Garrick admitted. The Dominion was hated, but no one wanted to see them wiped from existence. The others, the Krell Imperium, the Velos Hierarchy, the Xener Consortium, they're afraid that if we could do this to the Dominion, we could do it to them. Vale shook his head. That's insane. We only retaliated because we were provoked? Garrick cut in. Because we were attacked first? He shook his head. It doesn't matter anymore. The galaxy doesn't see the why. They only see the result. An entire empire, erased in weeks. His voice lowered. And they think they're next. Voss stared at the screen, unreadable. Garrick's expression tightened. You've made us strong, Captain. But now we stand alone. The transmission ended. The bridge fell into silence. Vale turned to Voss. So what do we do? Voss looked out into the void, at the burning wreckage of the Dominion. He thought of the 12 diplomats who had been executed. Thought of the cold rage that had driven him to this moment. Thought of Carvax's final words. He exhaled. We prepare. They're coming. Voss stood at the center of the war room, eyes locked on the galactic map. Red markers flooded the edges of Terran space. Dozens of fleets, hundreds of warships, all moving in one direction. Toward them. The coalition had formed faster than expected. Every major power that had once ignored humanity now saw them as a threat too great to ignore. The Xener Consortium, the Krell Imperium, the Velos Hierarchy, even species that had fought each other for centuries were now aligned in one purpose: to put humanity back in its place. Vale's voice was sharp. They won't negotiate. They can't, Voss replied. Not after what we did to the Dominion. A junior officer hesitated before speaking. Sir, we only retaliated. We didn't start this. Voss glanced at the screen, watching the swarm of incoming fleets. Doesn't matter. Silence hung in the room. The war hadn't ended. It had only just begun. Garrick's transmission came through again. His face was lined with exhaustion. Captain Voss, you're ordered to stand down. We're attempting diplomacy. Voss let out a short laugh. With who? Every major power has already decided we need to be put down. We can't afford an all-out war with the entire galaxy. Garrick pressed. We need time. Voss shook his head. Time for what? For them to surround us? To starve us out? You think they'll stop at containment? He leaned in, voice low. They won't. The moment they think we can't resist, they will erase us. Garrick hesitated. He knew it was true. Vale spoke next, his voice unwavering. What's the order? Voss's gaze didn't leave the map. The fleets were advancing fast. The coalition was betting on shock and overwhelming force. They thought humanity would panic, crumble under pressure. They still didn't understand. Voss's voice was cold, measured. We do the only thing they understand. Silence. Then Vale nodded. War. Voss turned to the tactical display. We won't fight them conventionally. We can't. Not yet. We make their advance costly. We turn their momentum against them. We force them to regret every inch they take. A comms officer frowned. You mean hit and run tactics? No, Voss said. I mean we break them before they ever reach our borders. Orders relayed through the fleet. Ghost formations of stealth ships slipped into position, preparing for sabotage runs. Human AI infiltrators hijacked enemy fleet networks, feeding them false data. The coalition still believed they had the element of surprise. They had no idea. Vale studied the projections. If we thin their numbers enough, will it stop them? No, Voss admitted. But it'll teach them what happens when they threaten us. A tense pause. Then the first engagement reports came through. A Krell battle group had just ceased all transmissions. Moments later, another report. A Velos dreadnought had turned its guns on its own fleet, its AI systems completely compromised. Panic spread through the enemy ranks. The real fight had begun. Garrick's voice crackled back through the comms. Voss, what did you do? Voss watched as the map lit up with destruction, his tone emotionless. What they made me do? Status? Vale scanned the data streams cascading across the tactical display. Multiple confirmed kills. 5 enemy battle groups neutralized. Several more in chaos. AI infiltration is working. They're turning on each other. Voss watched the carnage unfold in real time. The Iron Hands bridge remained silent, save for the quiet hum of processing systems and the occasional hushed confirmation from officers. The war had started before the Coalition even realized it. Now, it belonged to humanity. Garrick's face flickered onto the command screen. Voss, you are to cease all hostile actions immediately. That is a direct order from High Command. No, Voss said simply. Garrick's expression hardened. You think you can win a war against the entire galaxy? I don't need to win, Voss replied. I need them to lose. Garrick exhaled sharply. You're going to get us all killed. Voss leaned forward. They were going to kill us anyway. A static lace transmission broke through the interference. A Velos fleet commander, his voice strained. Terran forces, cease your aggression. We will discuss. The message dissolved into garbled noise before cutting off completely. Vale smirked. Looks like they just realized they don't want this war after all. Voss didn't smile. They're stalling. Regrouping. The real strike is still coming. Vale's expression darkened. Then we don't give them the chance. The bridge doors opened. Colonel Ivers entered, his cybernetic eye glowing dimly under the low light. Blackout Division just finished tearing through their relay networks. Their fleets are blind, can't even coordinate their own movements. Command chains are failing across multiple sectors. Voss gave a single nod. Deploy Phase 2. The officers moved with trained precision. Commands relayed through encrypted channels. Infiltration teams embedded in Coalition space activated deep cover assets. Cyber warfare AI seeded itself deeper into enemy systems, feeding false orders, overriding targeting locks, turning the Coalition's own weapons against itself. The first real cracks formed in the Coalition's advance. A Krell destroyer squadron, believing their command flagship had issued a full retreat, veered off course, straight into a Terran minefield. The Xener Armada, thrown into confusion by conflicting battlefield data, mistakenly engaged their Velos allies, unleashing a firefight before realizing their mistake. A single command from Voss sent shock teams onto enemy capital ships, boarding without resistance as AI overrides turned their security systems against them. Humanity wasn't fighting fair. And that was the point. Garrick's voice snapped through the comms again. Damn it, Voss! You don't understand what you're doing. No, Admiral, Voss said coolly. I understand exactly what I'm doing. A fresh alarm blared through the bridge. New contacts. Massive energy signatures spiking from deep space. Vale swore under his breath. We've got incoming. The Coalition's real fleet had arrived. 50 warships, planetary-class dreadnoughts, super-heavy cruisers, the Hammer Strike. They'd let the first wave flounder, waiting for the humans to overextend. Now they were bringing everything. Ivers exhaled slowly. Well, this is gonna be fun. Voss studied the battlefield. The Coalition still had numbers, firepower, resources. But they had one fatal flaw. They didn't understand what it meant to fight humans. He turned to the comms officer. Patch me through to their fleet. A moment later, the enemy command channel opened. Voss stared at the holographic projection of a Krell Grand Marshal, her reptilian features rigid with controlled fury. Terran, she spat. You have gone too far. Surrender now, or we end you. Voss tilted his head. No. The Marshal's mandibles twitched. This is not a request. I know, Voss said. And I don't care. He took a step closer, voice quiet but razor sharp. You invaded our space. You threatened our people. You gave us no choice but to respond. His gaze turned cold. Now we're showing you what that really means. The marshal's tone dropped to a growl. You think you can destroy us? I don't need to, Voss replied. You're going to destroy yourselves. A single command sent the final wave of infiltrations live. Every coalition warship, every planetary command post, every frontline AI system, corrupted. Their battle formations collapsed. Command structures fractured. Weapons turned on their own ships. The war was over before it even began. Voss watched as the largest fleet ever assembled broke itself apart. The transmission link remained open. The Grand Marshal's face twisted in horror. What have you done? Voss's voice was calm. Taught you a lesson. The human fleet didn't fire a single shot. They didn't need to. The coalition had killed itself. The Marshal stared, realization dawning in her widening eyes. You tricked us into fighting ourselves? Voss nodded. You made us a monster. Silence. The screen flickered. The transmission cut. The enemy fleet was gone. Garrick's voice returned, quieter this time. God help us, Voss. What have we become? Voss turned from the burning wreckage outside. Exactly what they feared. The war was over. Humanity stood alone. And no one would ever challenge them again.